I'm not doing the theme tune this week, Gary, because we're not live. No. I know we're alive. By the way, if you can hear a squeak, it's not my tummy or anything else, it's my chair. Hello, lovely YouTubers. Hello, lovely Gary. How are you?
Hello. I'm fine. How are you, Rachel?
Well, little stressed because I'm very busy. Trying to organise my sewing retreat with lots of requests and lots of lovely things happening. So that's busy, but good. I can see you've got your tea.
I've got my tea, my cup of tea. Tea
Yes,
time.
I've actually got an iced latte in here, which is nearly drunk because I've needed coffee today.
Nice.
So, but you know, we always have our little tea with us because that's why it's called Tea Time Tutorials. So lovely YouTubers, if you're joining us for the first time, bing, you will maybe not be aware of what's happening. This is the lovely Gary. He's the expert here. He's the teacher. I am Rachel, the student who tries her best and fails miserably on many occasions. And what Gary does is put me through my paces, which hopefully will put you through your paces. And if you would like to check out any of our other films in our tea time tutorials, you will see things like mindfulness exercises. There's my little birds, look. Yep. But we've also done sewing things as well, so do check out the playlist, and in fact check out all of our lovely videos on YouTube, because if you're an experienced sewist, there's lots there for you as well. So we do like to provide a full range of items here at Crafty Monkeys. Now, the first thing that we always do here at Crafty Monkeys is have a little bit of mindfulness and discuss life, and then I'll put the time codes underneath so you can ignore it and go straight into your sewing. But I haven't thought of my quote for Gary today. I always forget my quote. So is there anything you would like to discuss that has happened to you this week, Gary, that a lesson that has been learned this week?
Oh
Life
my
is
God.
about lessons.
It is. Life is one big lesson. And I just think that you should always just take life as it comes. And so therefore surprises are always around the corner. So one day you might go to bed with everything's hunky-dory, and the next you wake up and suddenly you're being bombarded with loads of troubles, woes, and all sorts of things to sort out. And you think, what have I done? You've done nothing. That's just what life does to you. And it's just that challenge for the day to just like, right, pace it out. What are the challenges for today? What are these things that have been come to me, been put on my plate? And one bit of advice I think is the best thing to do is, before you go bombarding in and I've got to get this all sorted out and life's really treating me really badly, is just relax, ground yourself, go out for a walk, just walk around the block. Even if you haven't got a park or anything, just go around the block. Fresh air and being outside is really great. So when life throws things at you, go for a walk. That's my philosophy. And then suddenly, while you're walking, and you suddenly start to put everything into sort of a much more clear, and you might know more clearly how to deal with those things that you need to deal with in your day.
Yes, and you know, that is a brilliant bit of advice. And for anybody who would have seen me nodding my head, is because that's exactly what happened to me this morning. And I rang Gary, and that is exactly what Gary told me to do. You also gave me another little bit of advice as well. It was really good in that you said to me, right, you need to just now imagine this light around you. It's cocooning you. You're safe and protected. And I know this sounds woo. But actually, I did. For a moment, I sat there, I thought, yes, let all these things bounce off me that were happening. They're not happening to me, they're happening around me. And it's, as you say, how you deal with them. And I reacted in a more positive way than I was going to react, because I was all for, as you say, recording a video, sending it to these people, going, listen, and that would have got us nowhere. So you're absolutely right. Take back, you know, the power, the control. Breathe, go for a walk, imagine that light around you, let things bounce off you. And when you do that as well, you realize that actually the people who have been coming to you with their issues or whatever, they all have their own issues or insecurities or fears, and that's where projection comes from. So there's a great line, isn't there? I'm okay, you're okay. It's a great motto to have in life. I'm okay, you're okay, we're okay, we're okay. And you just have to crack on. So there you go. Lesson for the day, bit of mindfulness, cocoon, grounding. Sorted. Now, the other lesson we're going to have today is all about identifying and establishing things in the sewist's, artiste's toolbox, which is our lovely Gary here today. And I'm going to now have to try and establish what these things are. This is going to be hilarious. But what
So I'm
else
gonna,
is behind that, Gary? Why are we doing that?
well, I just think, you know, you collect these tools, these things in your sewing box.
Yeah.
And you know, I've got my sewing box, you know, I showed you last week, it's this lovely big,
Yeah.
almost like a toolbox. It's see-through, so I can see everything in it. I'm not going to open it up and show you. It is a right mess. And occasionally that sort of cathartic, sort of like a cathartic process or a practice is have a really good sort out of your sewing box, because it's just very satisfying. If everything's going wrong, or you know your sewing's going wrong, or it's not quite gone as you want to, leave it, put it to one side, get your sewing box and have a good sort out. Even if you put all your pins in a line, and your needles all in the needle case, if you then go and sort out all your threads and put your threads sorted out, it is very cathartic, and it just does the job, and it sort of puts you back to thinking, right, now I'll go back to that job and I'll tackle that. So anyway, but I'm not going to show you this because it is in a mess inside. But what I've done is I've picked out a few things which aren't necessarily obvious to start with. So there's some obvious things that I keep, which I find really, really useful. And some of you might already be using these practices. And in fact, Rachel, I think you've seen me use these. So I would expect you to get some of these right, or at least have an idea of what perhaps I use them for. So what I've done is I've picked out to the side here. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, just 5 things from my sewing box, and they're things that I use in my practice. So my practice is very wide and varied, but I like sewing, I like artwork, I like making things, really. So there's all sort of things that end up in this toolbox. Now, you know, you don't have to have a clear sewing box like this. You could have one which is just an ordinary plastic toolbox. I prefer a toolbox because you've got like the different depths of them. You've got a nice big deep bit here. You can put bigger objects in. Like I've got a cutting mat in there. I've got a grader's ruler in there, like big wide grader's ruler. My bigger scissors. So though I've got one pair of scissors out here, I've got another big pair of scissors that can all go in the bottom there. And then you've got like the little sort of tray on the top, which has got lots of little sections, which again, they just get filled up with lots of bits and pieces, but it's still really useful. I've never really had a traditional sewing box. And I think for a guy who does like sewing, obviously a toolbox, that's how you relate to your practice. But some people do like a nice sewing box, which has got, you know, all nice fabric inside and bits like that. So same thing, you can still have it, give it a good tidy up, and you can still keep most of these bits and pieces in there, just so that when you need them, you know where to find them. I'm going to put that down. Right, that's out the way. Put it over there. Okay, right. So Rachel, I'm going to show you some bits and pieces. I'm going to show you to screen and down here on my table.
Okay.
And I'm going to tell you, I might give you a sort of a description of what it actually is. And then you may be able to say one thing that it's used for, what I use it for, but you might know 2 things, or you might not know at all, and you might just have to make it up. So let's just see how you get on. So you don't have to say, just write it down, and then I'll show you each bit, and then we'll go back to them all, and then we can discuss them. All right?
Yes.
You ready? You ready? Right.
I'm so ready. Please show me a tape measure, and I'll go, that's a tape measure.
No, it's not a tape measure, no. Okay, right. I think one of my most useful tools that I have in my toolbox are these. Now, I can tell you what they are. They're chopsticks.
I was going to say, I know they're chopsticks.
They know the chopsticks. There's not a pair of chopsticks because sometimes they end up odd, but there's a pair of chopsticks. So chopsticks, what would I use chopsticks for, Rachel, in my practice? So just think about that. Maybe just make a little note what you think, and then let me know that you've written something down. So there's no special, the chopsticks, but I think one is like a bamboo one and one is like a nice little bit of wood, but it doesn't matter what the chopsticks are made for, it's the chopstick itself which is important. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay with that? Right.
Yes.
Okay, this one you might not know and you might not have seen before. It is this. Can you see this metal object here?
Okay.
Okay, so it's a metal object. It's got, can you see that inside there? Okay. And there's a cavity. So there's somewhere I can push something in there. I can push it in there and I can pull it out this end. And I've got this sort of like little lever, this little metal piece here. So I've got that. Now, what, Rachel, do you think that does? What do you think that has the purpose for?
Oh, okay.
It does something. All right.
Yeah.
Okay, right, I'm going to put that down. Right. Ooh. Now, can you see these?
Yes.
They are light tweezers, but in fact, because they're slightly bent at the top, they're called more forceps tweezers. So they are tweezers.
Mm-hmm.
What would I use these little forceps tweezers for? What would they? In fact, there's a couple of things I can do with these.
Okay.
All right.
Yes.
Put them down. I'm going to make sure I put it back down in order so we can back up in order. So that's there. Okay, right now. This is a lighter. So it's a lighter. Now, we've discussed lighters. So there's several things I can do with a lighter.
Apart from lighting candles to make it mood lighting for your workshop. Yes. Okay.
All right, got that. Yeah. Then lastly, so that's number 4. Lastly is this. Have you ever seen me use this before? It looks like a pastry wheel, but it's not a pastry wheel. Yes. There's a wheel at the end that moves around, and on that wheel, I can show it under the camera as well. It's got loads of spikes, really sharp spikes in it. But I can hold it in my hand like that, and it's got spikes, and it's the spikes. But it's really, really sharp, really, really spiky, like almost like nails. So what would I use that for in sewing, or something to do with sewing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Right. Okay, you're okay?
Yeah.
Right then, Rachel, let's see how well you've got on. Let's see what. Let's have a look. Right. Let's go back.
Yes.
Let's go back. So, chopsticks, Rachel. What did you put down for chopsticks?
Eating some food. No, I didn't. No, I didn't. Although I haven't got any chopsticks in my house. So what I said there was a couple of things that I thought you could do. Definitely for pushing out the corners of when you've made seams. And the reason that you do that is because if you were to try and use scissors or something, then you may well go through the edges. This is a nice blunt, rounded end. Thank you very much. Which means that you can push out nicely, but you're not pushing through your fabric. I'm
blown away. You're spot on, Rachel. And so you have been listening when I've been teaching, haven't you? You've listened to me.
See, I'm learning through osmosis.
You are, and as I say, definitely from osmosis. I mean, the worst thing you could do really is use a pair of scissors to try and push out a corner, be that a corner on a collar, a corner of the, like maybe if you bagged out a little purse or a bag or whatever, and you use the edge of the scissors. They are so sharp, most likely by the time you've used a bit of force, that's going to go through. But if you use a blunt chopstick rather than a knitting needle, knitting needles are still pointed at the end. So even if you put a knitting needle in there, they're likely to go through. If they don't go through the corner you've sewn, they might actually just pierce the fabric itself. So something blunt, but still something narrow. So you can get down narrow little places and you can push it out. So I've got graded ends. I've got more of a blunt one on this cream colored one, and then it's slightly more pointed, tapered on this brown wooden one as well. So they are perfect. So I always have a couple of little chopsticks, really good to have in your sewing box.
Well, I also thought of another use as well for those, potentially, which would be if you're stuffing something. So if you're stuffing, pushing stuffing down into a toy or something because you want to get it into the corners again, so you could use those to stuff with.
Yeah. So you've got there's 2 purposes there. So yeah, absolutely. You could stuff wadding or anything down into tiny little places with using those chopsticks. So
brownie points.
So brownie points and a bonus point for those 2 things there.
Thank you.
Okay, right, Rachel, how did you get on with this little metal object?
Well, now this is it's like deja vu when you've been somewhere before and you can't quite place it. It's in your brain. Now I'm looking at this going, okay, I'm pretty sure that what you're doing here is feeding fabrics through, and I've actually written binding, bias binding. I just kind of written something to do with putting fabrics through and pulling them out, so they fold over together and they're then together so you can sew. I even said something about belts. Maybe you could do something to make a belt.
Well, it might not be wide enough to make a belt, but you are again absolutely spot on. And maybe you have come across this maybe when you were on the TV channel when you were sort of demonstrating or people were demonstrating things, but it makes bias binding. So we can buy bias binding on the roll. We can and it comes in various colors, various widths, and we can buy lengths of it and use it to bind around things. But we also can make our own. So we can make our own on a piece of fabric that's cut on the bias. I'm just going to bring over some tools here just to demonstrate. So you've got, these come in various sizes. So this is quite a wide one, so make some wide bias binding. But you can get narrow ones and quite small, depending on the width of the binding that you want to make. But you need a piece of fabric to go through it, and you cut that piece of fabric on the bias. So this piece of fabric here is cut on the bias. And I'm going to just show you, I can show you with a piece of paper. Let me just tear off a piece of paper, which has got, I've got a piece of paper here, which has got lines on. So imagine, and you've got a piece of woven fabric and the weave goes across, that's the warp, and then, oh no, that's the warp. No, that's the weft, sorry, that's the weft of the lines going forward, and your warp runs down. So you've got, imagine that that's the woven fabric. To cut a piece of bias fabric, you go 90 degrees like that. You fold it at that. And this angle here is bias. So it means it's where it all goes, it's not, the weave is like cut at angles like that, across. And it allows that piece of fabric to be slightly stretchy because it's cut on the bias. Now, if you cut a piece on the bias, it will mean that it will go round curves and circles and things like that, which is really nice. So I know when a lot of people just make quilts and they tend to not cut their binding on the bias because they don't need to, because they're just going through straight lines and down. But when you're going around something like a circle or an armhole or something that's curved, you need to have it cut on the bias. That's when this little gadget comes into play as well. So we can't just literally just sort of fold it. It might all just go out of line and do that. So we use this little gadget to help fold it for us. You need the gadget, you need something to push it through. So this is just the bradawl. We might have a big pin to pull it through. You'll need your, I'm just going to demonstrate. This is my little ironing board here and an iron, and my little travel iron. And this is how you do it. So this strip is cut for this size is 2 3/4 inches. You literally push your point of your fabric through there, and you can use your bradawl or you can use a pin just to help pull it through till you get to the other end. And then you've got that little piece coming to the end. As it comes out of the end, you just use your iron to hold it. And then with this tab here, use your finger to just pull it along. So as you're pulling along, you're using your iron to just press it all in place. And then you add up, this iron's not on, by the way, but then you can see just by pressing, you end up with your bias strip here. So then you can actually then use your bias then to go round corners and things like that. So basically you're in control. You don't have to go and buy your bias off the shelf. You can find the fabric you'd like to have the edging around whatever you're making. And then you can cut your bias strip, put it through this little gadget, and it makes the little bias strips for you. So you can create lengths and lengths and lengths and lengths of it. So I just think in your toolbox, it's always useful to have one of those, because I just think you might think, oh, I really want to put some bias edging around that, whatever I'm working on. And you can't, you have to stop, go down the shop or go online and buy some. If you've got something like this, you can go into your scrap box and you can find some lengths of fabric, cut them on the bias. You can even join them all up and you can start creating your own lengths of bias to actually sew around things. So that's that tool. So you were spot on there, Rachel. And I just thought we'd just use that as a little demonstration just to show, if no one's ever used one of those, they're really quite useful to use.
Do we know what the actual name is of that little thing?
I just call it a bias binding maker, just a bias binding. Yeah, just that's what I just use it for. So you can get, and you can buy them. You can go to your haberdashery store. You'll find them most likely to have some of those in their sort of like their hemline range, or you can find them online. So you can buy a whole range of these. In fact, I've got ones which are like, I think I've got 4 in total, starting off with a big one, medium, small, and smaller. So it's quite nice. So, but always keep them. They're handy to have.
Yeah.
Okay.
Very good.
Right.
Okay. Excellent.
We're doing very well.
With the tweezers.
The tweezers. Yes, thank you. So I nearly forgot where we were. So the tweezers, Rachel. What do we use these for? Why would they be useful to have in our sort of sewing box? What would I use?
Well, I was probably being a little bit obvious here. But I said, I mean, obviously, when you're picking up small things, so you're picking up little maybe buttons or, for your mixed media projects and things, you're picking up small things. But I also said maybe something to do with small threads, if you want to try and, you know, pick off small threads or whatever, that kind of thing. So that was what I went for, but I don't know if that's too obvious.
No, you're kind of right. I mean, what they're actually for is for threading. So because you can get right in, I don't know, maybe it's a guy thing, but quite often I find sometimes my fingers are too big and fat to actually get in and thread. So do some thread, say on my machine, to thread through my machine, or especially if you're threading an overlocker or serger. Because if you imagine, you open up the side of the overlocker and the serger, and there's all these little gadgets, all these little bits and pieces to get in. If you go in with the tweezers, you can actually then thread it through there. So if I take a piece of thread here, so I've got a piece of thread, what I would do is, again, I always cut the thread really neat and tidy, and then you could just hold the end of the thread with just a little bit of gap there. I think you can just see that.
Yeah.
I just hold it over my hand. And then, then you can go through the needle. So if, for instance, my fingers are too fat to get through the needle of the serger or even my sewing machine, I can then thread it through that. Sometimes it's easier than holding it with your fat fingers and thumb. For me, it's like, oh, I'm trying to get that through, and I get caught up around the machinery. I can just use this, and it's much easier to push through and to start to threading. If you've got like a lot of eyes and things to go through coming down your machine, you can just keep, rather than having to wet the end and try and thread it all through, you can just use that to pass it through with. There's several other things you can do with these as well. So I use it for the serger, for the sewing machine to thread up, but also go back to the stuffing. If you like, particularly people that create small little rag dolls and things like that with like little limbs, hands where you've got to stuff down the fingers, if you just get a little bit of wadding on there, then you can really go down the end and just release that little bit of wadding. So you can just actually start stuffing, especially if you like making small things, they're perfect for stuffing sort of little bits and pieces with these. So that's what I use those for.
Excellent. They are really useful things to have, aren't they? As you say, you can't take these things for granted, but they're very useful to have in your arsenal.
You could also, I mean, if, for instance, you need to just sort of pull out loads of, you've unpicked something and all the little threads are left in there that you need to unpick, you can use this, because sometimes we haven't got, you know, we might have broken our fingernails or something like that. We can't get the threads out. You can just go in with your tweezers and just pull them out with your tweezers. So they're great for pulling loose threads out as well. So that's what they're for. Okay, where are we up to? Where are we up to? What was the next one on the list?
So the lighter is next.
Lighter. Okay, so Rachel, you've seen me use a lighter before. Now, what was that for?
Well, apart from, as I say, I think you're quite partial to lighting candles in your bath, you know, with your rose petals that you throw in there, and then people give you grapes.
Throw me grapes, yeah.
Okay, so basically, when we did a fantastic fabric masterclass, which is in our tea time tutorials, if anybody wants to have a look at that, because it was superb. It was an hour, all about different fabrics, how to choose them, find them, what use them for, etc. So you were burning some fabrics. Now, as I recall, when you were burning one of the fabrics, one of the things that you can really tell if a fabric is not a natural fabric, it's a man-made fabric, something like a polyester or something like that, you would burn it and then you get this horrible plasticky smell, and it would burn, I would imagine, quite quickly. Whereas if you were to burn wool, a pure wool, then you wouldn't get that horrible smell. And I think, wouldn't it just burn out, or would it wouldn't kind of on fire, would it?
It wouldn't catch on fire, and it would smell of burning hair.
Yeah.
So you've really been listening, Rachel. You have. Okay. So yes, you use your lighter for, you can do a fabric test. So you can, if you go back and have a look at our fabric test and our YouTube tutorials and stuff on testing for fabrics, that's all there. So yes, definitely, to find out if what fabric you're working with, you can use a lighter and either, you know, it either go out or it'll melt. But you can use the lighter for that melting quality, because we do use synthetics, and where we find synthetics is usually probably a polyester ribbon. So here's some ribbon. Oh, it happens to have my name on it. How nice.
Fancy.
How posh is that? So this is some ribbon that's printed with, you know, and I can put these into garments. So it's just literally just printed off. So what I can do is I can print, I can cut the label like so. So I can cut out, and this is any ribbon. So even if you're using a bit of ribbon on a garment or something like that, and you don't want it to fray. So if you look, it's all fraying on that edge. to stop it fraying and disintegrating, what you do is you use the side of the flame just to singe the edge. So it just singes the edge. So now it won't, it will just, it's almost like melted the edge. It's a polyester ribbon. And so it's not melted completely. And it does take a little bit of control that you're not actually holding it over. But if you just singe it to the side, you can use a lighter. Again, you could use a lighter, but you could use a little, like just a little tea light candle as well, and you could just hold it with both hands and just run it just along the flame. So I would just use it both sides, just to singe it. I've cut it with scissors to stop it from fraying, and then I can then just press it. I'll just press neatly under each edge, and then that goes into the neckline or into the inside pocket of the garment. So that's what I'd use that for. The other thing you can use it for, same method, most zips, unless it's a cotton with metal teeth zips, most zips are nylon today. And if you can't quite get the right size zip, what you can do is where the teeth run down, so you've got your zipper pull and your teeth run down, there's a little bar at the bottom. So you can, that's the stopper. You can create your own stopper. So if you want it to make it shorter, you measure just a little bit extra so the zip can come down, and then you just oversew around those teeth, just oversew, oversew, oversew. Then, not necessarily with your best scissors, but a good sharp pair of scissors, cut about 1/2 inch to 1 inch below that. Then use your lighter to then just singe along the bottom, the same, like on the same tape as the ribbon, and then like the same tape that the zip is on, and just singe it, and it would just melt the bottom of that zip, and it'll stop the zip starting to fray. So that's always useful. And of course, like you said, like even now, I always have my little incense. I always have that going, just to bring the ambience into my studio, my sewing room. So I've always got nice things. So it's used for so much, the lighter, and I don't smoke. Yeah. I used to smoke, and I gave up about sort of 15 years ago. Best thing I've ever done. But I still have a lighter with me because I just find them really, really useful.
They are really useful. I'm sure I've got one laying around here somewhere, because I've actually got a thing of sage. I should have wafted my sage around me this morning before when I woke up and had a barrage of emails and comments. So yes, that's a good idea to have a lighter with you. Excellent. Yeah. Okay, so I'm doing pretty well.
You are, Rachel, right?
I am. So the final item, yes, was now what is this called?
What did you think it was called?
I have no idea what it's called.
What did you think it was for?
Okay, what I think it's for is, so basically, if you're doing mixed media projects and you want to put some thread through, you would literally like that, and then you could put your thread through the holes that you've created. But also yes, like that maybe. But also as well, I just think as a decorative edge, it's a nice tool to have to create a decorative edge. As you said there, fold it over. It's, it makes it easier to fold something over. So that was it for me. That
was it. Actually, I mean, nearly there, Rachel.
Okay. Why do I always get a minus in every class that we do?
It's not a minus. It's not a minus. You don't have points taken off. And I think you're nearly there. And maybe that people that view, they can make a comment and say you should have got this point or at least half a point, maybe half a point.
Okay.
So, but we're just, if anyone's watching or they tune in later, do let us know what I should have awarded Rachel for this, because this is actually a tracing tool, and it's used for tracing for patterns, to make patterns and to trace round patterns. And it's something that I purchased when I was an undergraduate at Fashion College, and it was part of their kit. And I've never not used this, and it's something that's always within my sewing box, so it's handy to reach, so I know I can use it. And I'm going to just show you how I use that. So first of all, I've got a piece of paper. This is a piece of lining paper, and I've got 2 pieces, and that I've got it folded over in 2. Now, what you can do, so this is a sleeve. So this is a sleeve taken out of a garment. So I'm trying to copy or trying to make my own version of a sleeve. So I've taken this from a t-shirt and I've used that. Now, what I could do is I could use a pencil or a pen, and I could just mark around, do little dots and dashes, and just sort of mark around that, and that would take me a little bit of time. And also I might have to rest my hand on it, and I could move the pattern piece as I'm doing it. But when you've got a tool like this, what you do is you just run that tool along the edge. But so I'm going to go round the edge, so it's going round all around the edge, and because it's on a wheel, it's really easy to use. So I'm going to go round, 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 all the way to the bottom, and it's piercing. What it's doing is it's just piercing, like you said, to pierce the paper, or to pierce. So I'm piercing it. But also I want to just do some marks through the fabric, because I want to mark these are balance points. These are little points which is going to line up later on with the rest of the garment. And I can just go through the fabric, and it goes through the fabric and it goes through the paper at the same time, because there's those little needles there, those little sharp needles. So when I lift this away, though you probably can't see on the screen, even if I bring it up, this has got a pierce like dots, loads of little tiny dots. It is something, maybe you put your glasses on so you can see as we get older. Then when I've got my pierced dots, I can either cut directly, or from those dots, then I can start then drawing the line and start filling those dots in and going round. So then I can draw. By folding it on two, not only do I create one pattern, but then when I open it up, I've got another pattern. So if I wanted 2 bits, so I want 2 sleeves, I've now got 2 patterns for 2 sleeves. So it means that you can create, with one of these, you can layer up paper and you can create more than one pattern at a time. If I had someone else in the room and said, right, let's just cut us all, I'm going to just draw us all a pattern, I could just do 3 or 4 layers of paper, draw around it, it's all got the marks on, and then I could give it out. So I can create more than one pattern at a time. I can trace things off on several layers. So that's why this is one of my favorite things, because I like my pattern cutting, and I like to, look, all of us can buy patterns off the shelf. We can all go away and buy a commercial pattern to use to make us garments. Isn't it much better if you've got a favorite garment in your wardrobe and think, I'd really like to make that again? Then you can take the garment carefully apart and then use your tracing wheel to then trace around it and to make your new pattern to then recreate your garment again. There you go.
Excellent. Talking about that,
yes.
People may, at the moment, Gary is doing something for our regular VIP club over on the Crafty Monkeys website, which is actually deconstructing a t-shirt and remaking a t-shirt using things like this. But that's only for our members. You can become a member for about £15 a month. But by the time you watch this, the content will have probably gone, because it only lasts for a month. So have a look on our website, craftymonkies.com, because when you're watching this in 6 months or a year, that content might be for sale on our site. There is also a class that Gary is doing for us as well in October, which will definitely be for rent on our site. And that is where we are going to make a lovely top from a t-shirt. So transferring a simple item that you have into a lovely top. So dressmaking skills are plenty on our website. So do have a look, craftymonkies.com. Lovely. Well, I think, I think decorative purposes, I think I definitely deserve a point for that. But yes, I did not know it had anything to do with working on a pattern. So I have definitely learned something new today, which is excellent.
Because I don't think you've seen this before. I don't think I've demonstrated this before, and it was one of those things. But I'm really impressed, Rachel, the things that you've remembered. Is just you saying, "Oh, I don't know anything. I just do the presenting. I just do all the editing and get so that everyone gets to see what we're doing." It's all going in there, Rachel. I just need to extract it out.
It is all going in. It is. Well, you are extracting it out. I mean, you're extracting calm out of me, because nobody else would have stopped me from sending those ranty emails back today, except you did. And you're also extracting my sewing knowledge. So this is good to see. Lovely. Thank you so much. And please do, as Gary said there, put any comments underneath about what you think. If you've got any extra ideas for the items that we've used, we would love to hear your comments to see if you have any more ideas, and also if you think I deserved a point there at the end, because I reckon I've got 4 out of 5 there, maybe 4.5 out of 5.
Yeah, at least 4.5. And you had bonus points, remember? You had quite a few points. You did. And I haven't even kept count of what you did get, what you didn't. So I just think, yes, you did really, really well, Rachel.
I've kept count. I'll be actually putting it onto a certificate and mailing it to myself. Ah, now, lovely Gary, what are we going to do next week? 'Cause I think we're doing something quite different next week. We're going back to a mindful exercise next week, I think.
Yes, I'd like us because we can do a little bit of mindful drawing. I think we've all forgotten how to doodle, and that's what I want to bring back to you. I was a doodler when you sit in, even from school, and you were listening, and it was going in, but also you needed to just do something with your hands. And I think sometimes we can just think too much, and we're not, doing a practice that actually makes us a little bit more calmer. And I think doodling is quite calming. You can buy books. We're colouring in books and bits and pieces like that. But why not just create your own that you can do yourself? So next week, Rachel, what I want you to do is I want you just with a sheet, a A4 piece of from your printer, piece of paper. I want an A4 piece of white paper, a pen or a biro, black ink if you got it, that's fine, rather than a pencil. So when you've made a mark, it's got to stay. And you're going to draw some circles. So we're going to draw in fact, we're going to draw 9 circles on a piece of paper. So something to draw a circle round, which probably is no wider in diameter than about 2 inches. Because if you think you've got to get 9, we'll do a little 9 in a grid across the box. So sort of like 2 inch. So if anyone else out there that wants to join in while we do it, then please just all you need is a piece of paper, a pen, and something to draw around, a circle to draw around. So you're going to put them on the page. And I think we'll just have a little bit of play. And I'm going to get you to do some what we call mindful meditative doodles. That's what I'm going to call it.
I like it. I might wear yoga pants as well.
You might. Yeah.
Lovely. Well, that's simple, and you don't need any fancy equipment for that at all, and you can just literally join in. So if you are watching this playlist out of order, just have a look for it in the playlist. I'm not sure what we'll call it yet. It'll be mindful doodling, maybe something like that, but you'll be able to spot it, and and then watch along and enjoy yourself. So I'm looking forward to that. We should be live with that as well.
Yes.
So if anybody is watching this before Friday the I think that's going to be about 28th. Let's just have a look.
26th.
Yeah, 26th. So Friday 26th will be a live one. So if you're watching this will come out on Friday. If you're watching it in the next week, then do come back to us on the 26th, and we'll be live doing some lovely doodling. Fabulous, Gary. Thank you so much. Great fun as always. Cheers.
Yes.
And thank you to lovely YouTuber, whoever you are. Please do subscribe. Please do like the content and share it. It helps us to swim in the algorithms. But definitely hitting the like button helps, and commenting on the video, it helps us push us out there. And then we always say as well, look, my cup's nearly empty. If anybody would like to buy me a coffee or buy Gary a coffee, there is a link below where you can buy us a coffee if you've enjoyed this content. If you've learned something today and you've gone, I did not know that, maybe that is worth a coffee. Or just a smile and click onto the next video. Right, lovely Gary and lovely YouTubers. Thank you very much. We will see you the next time. Goodbye.